I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. Today, we're talking about quick, satisfying sewing projects that you can complete in a single day. We'll cover why these projects are so important for your sewing journey, how to identify patterns that truly can be finished quickly, and 5 specific projects you can start today, even if you only have a few hours to spare. All right, so Haley, what's the fastest you've ever completed a sewing project from start to finish?
I love a fast sewing project, so there's a handful that come to mind. But one that I wore recently that I kind of forgot I had was I made a pair of knit Joss pants. And those were really, really fast because Joss is a pull-on wide leg, slightly cropped elastic waist pant that we have in our Seamwork catalog, which is already so fast and easy. But I omitted the patch pockets and just sewed them in a kind of a wide rib knit. And it probably took me more time to cut them than it did to sew them. Maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah,
total?
They are really fast.
They're really fast.
Yeah, I've made them a few times and they're really fast. And this brings us to our free pattern right now is Joss, actually. So you can actually get Joss for free. We rotate our free patterns every season, and that's the free pattern for right now. So if you want it, we'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can get it, or you can just go to our website and find it in our catalog. Just look for Joss there, and you'll be able to download it for free. So I hope you guys enjoy that one. It's a really awesome pattern.
It's one of my most sewn patterns.
Yeah, and I wear it all. I wore it yesterday, actually. I have a pair that I made in like a rayon crepe it's black with little white clovers all over it. So cute.
Cute.
And I actually put on a different pair of pants yesterday, and I just got back from vacation, and the pants did not feel like they fit as well as they did before. And I was like, oh, these are too tight. So I took them off and put on my comfy Joss pants and felt a lot better. And if you have a question for us that we could use as an icebreaker in a future episode, we would love to hear it. So if you have a question, you can leave it in a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll bring it to a future episode. All right, so if you're anything like me, you probably have some pretty ambitious sewing plans. You know, like a couture jacket with bound buttonholes or that perfectly fitted pair of jeans. So those projects are definitely worth pursuing, but they can take weeks or even months to complete. You know, I made a pair of Chelsea jeans over the spring, and it took me a full month to finish them working in little chunks. So definitely worth it, but it can be a project. And sometimes when I'm in the middle of a really involved project, I do start to lose my sewing momentum. I'm sure that happens to you guys as well. And that's why I've found that mixing in quick, satisfying projects is so important. They just provide that feeling of completion that keeps me motivated. And I've actually started to be a lot more intentional about planning some quick wins in between my more challenging makes. That's something I do very intentionally now. So quick projects, they just serve so many purposes in our sewing lives. They help fill wardrobe gaps when you need something specific right away. They let you experiment with trends without huge investments of time. And they're perfect for those last-minute occasions when you suddenly just need something to wear. Plus, completing a project from start to finish, even if it's a really simple one, it just feels so good. It builds your confidence and it keeps your creativity flowing. So, Haley, how do you personally balance quick projects with more involved ones in your sewing?
You know, it really depends on the stage of my life that I'm in. I used to sew one quick and easy project for every challenging project. That was my rhythm that I had before I had children. And now I feel like I sew probably in the ballpark of 8 garments a year, and maybe 1 or 2 of them are like a little bit more challenging. I'm just in a place in my life where I don't have as much time for sewing as I'd like to dedicate to it. So instead of like getting really down on myself about it, I just have created a new balance of things. And I've also inserted more non-garment projects into my sewing rotation, which qualifies as quick and easy a lot of the times.
Yeah.
What about you? How do you create a balance?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the non-garment projects. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast already, but I'm working on a quilt that I'm doing over the course of the entire year. So it's a sampler quilt, and I'm sewing a different block every month.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sewed one over the weekend, and it's a really nice little break from garment projects. And it, I think, qualifies as quick and easy since I'm only doing one block at a time, and usually takes me maybe an hour, depending on the block, sometimes half an hour, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours. But it's nice to finish something like that. But generally, I try to have a more challenging project and then an easy project and just kind of alternate them like that. And the way I do that is I use the Design Your Wardrobe process every season. So if you follow us on YouTube, you can see every season I put together a wardrobe plan. I really have fun kind of putting together all these ideas and making mood boards and figuring out what fabrics I'm going to use and the color palette and all of this. And it's a really fun part of my sewing practice. And when I do that, I really try to think about which of these projects are going to take a lot of time and which are going to be quicker so that I can alternate them. And sometimes I end up with more quick and easy ones, sometimes fewer quick and easy ones, but I do try to make that an intentional part of my planning process. So that's kind of how I go about it. I found that if I only have challenging or difficult projects, I can kind of burn out. And I like to have that motivation. Like when I finished those Chelsea jeans, it took me a month. I worked on the Farrah wrap cardigan right after that because it was something I knew would be really quick and satisfying to sew and would still get a lot of wear. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah. What do you find are some of the benefits that you've experienced from working on quick projects?
I think number one is motivation and just feeling satisfied and like you want to keep going, because sewing can be hard sometimes. It's challenging to learn new things and practice all of these different skills that come together, whether that's the motor skills part of it, the visualization, all of these things that are involved in sewing. So I feel like having those quick and easy projects just gives you those wins that really feel super motivating and make you want to keep going. I think that's the biggest one. But also just, I don't know, it's fun to have those extra things in your wardrobe. I'm trying to create a wardrobe that's 80% handmade right now. That's my goal. And I think I couldn't do that if I were only sewing things that took me a month to finish.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to actually wear a lot of what you're making.
Yeah, I agree. I think that sense of accomplishment that it provides can be super motivating, especially, and you need those little bits of motivation, whether that's coming off of something that you had really like delayed gratification, or maybe it's coming off of kind of like a couple sewing losses.
Mm-hmm.
Giving yourself some wins is really helpful. I also find that one of the unexpected benefits is that it gives you an appreciation for lots of different kinds of garments in your wardrobe. I think sometimes we can really elevate the challenging projects in our mind, and then we don't give as much love to the simple things like a t-shirt that you probably are going to wear every single week. So I feel like it's kind of a practice of appreciation for things big and small in my wardrobe.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it, I think.
How have quick projects helped you to develop your skills for those bigger projects?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like having quick projects because it lets you do more of them, you get the repetition. You get your reps in. You get to practice over and over again. Whereas if you're just working on, really involved coats and outerwear or jeans or things that really take a long time, you just aren't able to practice as often. So just getting more stitching under your belt, I think.
Yeah. I think that sometimes they're lately I've been sewing a lot of little projects and home deck things and things for my kids. And I've been trying to include little unexpected touches or techniques that I don't use all the time. For instance, I made a scrunchie for Charlie the other day, and I did a little flat piping along one of the edges just to make it stand out a little bit more. And it's obviously, I've used that technique many times before, but it was fun to just switch it up and play around a little bit. I feel like quick projects. They're lower stakes, so sometimes it can be a really great opportunity to like insert a little hack or a surface technique or something fun, a trim, something fun.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. And I think there are certain skills that no matter what you're sewing, you have to use those skills. For example, picking out a fabric to go with your pattern. So because of that, even if you're sewing something that's very quick and easy, you're still practicing that skill. And I think there are a few things like that you get to practice with every project, no matter how simple and how quick it is.
Yeah, like the soft skills.
Yeah, those decision-making skills. All right, well, let's talk about some tips for finding those patterns and using them. So number one is to identify patterns that have fewer pieces. So not all easy or beginner patterns can actually be completed in a day. So just because something is a beginner pattern or just because something is labeled easy doesn't necessarily mean that it's really quick. So the number of pattern pieces is a huge indicator of how long a project will take. So if you want something that's going to be quick and easy, look for patterns with 4 or 5 pieces or fewer for a true one-day project. So a perfect example of this is our bow woven top. So it's a summer staple with identical front and back pieces that can be completed in just a couple hours. Very few pieces on it and really easy to sew. And its simple silhouette makes it perfect for showcasing fabrics like linen, cotton lawn, or even a lightweight denim. And another great option, just to give you kind of more examples of what to look for, is the Alice knit tee with just 3 pattern pieces. It's super quick, and it's just, for me, it's a wardrobe essential. I've made it 3 times in various rib knit fabrics. 3 times or 4 times, I can't remember. I think I've made it, I'm trying to imagine them in my head. I think I've actually made it 4 times. And I wear them all fall and winter. I wear them as layering pieces under dresses. I wear them with jeans. I just wear them all the time. So that's another really great one. But those just kind of give you some examples. Both of those are things that have very few pattern pieces, and that's a great indicator that it's going to be something that's quick and easy, and therefore something you can make over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I think lots of times we do convolute like easy and quick. And something can just have like a ton of steps. They're all easy steps, but it's still a lot of steps.
Yeah, that's very true.
All right. Our next tip is to choose patterns with simple closures, zippers, buttonholes, all of those other kinds of closures. They add significant time to a project. So for true one-day projects, I like to look for things that have elastic waistbands instead of zippers, pull-on styles rather than button fronts. I know that I was talking about Joss earlier, but the Joss pants are really a perfect example of this. They feature an elastic waistband, really breezy wide legs, a high rise with 2 patch pockets. So all in all, again, I think this is like 4 pattern pieces we're talking about. And it's a pull-on, so it's definitely a big win. They're a perfect introduction to pants making without the complexity of zippers and fly fronts and all of that. I've seen sewists complete these in just a few hours in fabrics like cotton twill, linen blends, or chambray, or be like me and cheat and make it out of a knit and make it in an hour and a half.
Go rogue.
Especially if your serger is already threaded up in the right color. And like Sarai mentioned earlier, this pattern's actually free, and we'll talk about it more at the end. But if you go to our website and search for the Joss pants, you will find them there. Sarai, you've made the Joss pants before. What's your experience on the construction time on these?
They're really quick, probably just a couple hours. The last ones I made, I did in silk charmeuse, and I omitted the patch pocket, so it was even faster. It was really, really fast. It's a really great, quick and easy project. All right, the next one is to harness the quick sew power of knits. So one of the fastest ways to speed up your sewing is to work with knit fabric. Knits often require fewer pattern pieces, less fitting precision, and simpler construction. So the Astoria sweater is really perfect for knit beginners with just 5 pattern pieces and minimal fitting required. It's a really easy one if you're new to sewing knits. It comes with 2 different sleeve lengths, and the crop style works really well with high-waisted bottoms. It's one of my favorite patterns. And I know it's one of the favorites of our members, too. It's really popular. And it's been around for a while, and it's still very, very popular.
It's one of our earliest patterns.
Yeah, it's a great one. So for this, I recommend stable knits like Ponte, French terry, or sweater knits with some structure. And if you're new to sewing with knits, here are a few tips. You want to use a ballpoint or stretch needle to prevent holes in your fabric. That's really, really important. You don't necessarily need a serger. If you don't have a serger, you can use a narrow zigzag stitch so that you make sure that your stitches still stretch along with the fabric. We also have a video on YouTube, I believe, on sewing knits without a serger. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the show notes, but I'm pretty sure we do have a video all about that on our YouTube channel as well, so you can get some tips there. And we have lots of videos with tips for sewing knits. And then choose stable knits for your first quick projects. That's really helpful. If you're choosing something that's not too stable, that's a little bit more shifty, it's going to make it a little bit harder. So those are my primary tips for sewing with knits if you're new to it. We have a video on YouTube we did not too long ago that's 20 tips for sewing with knits in less than 10 minutes. I think it's actually like 7 or 8 minutes. It's really fast. It has a ton of tips in it. So you might want to check that out if you want to learn a little bit more about sewing with knits. Do you have any favorite tips for sewing knits quickly, Haley?
I have 2 tips. The first one is that I used to teach a beginner's knit class. It was one of my more popular classes I taught. And I always advise people to look for patterns that have a lot of band finishes and cuff finishes, because for beginners, that's a lot faster and easier than dealing with hemming knits, which can sometimes require a little bit more troubleshooting. So Astoria is finished entirely with bands. So that would be a really great option there. And then the second tip is more just in how you choose your knit projects. Look for projects that don't have any special techniques like buttonholes or anything too fancy going on. Actually, if you go on the Seamwork catalog and you filter by advanced beginner and then filter by knits and fabric type, those are going to be all of our simplest, easiest knits to make, because in order to qualify as an advanced beginner pattern for knitwear, it can't have any specialty techniques.
Mm-hmm. That's a great tip. It's a really good way to find those easier patterns to sew.
All right, moving on to our next tip. Consider designs with minimal finishing. So finishing techniques like facings, linings, bindings, they can all add hours to your sewing time. So I like to look for patterns with clever construction that really minimize these steps. I like the Dara blouse. I think it's a great example of this. It's a simple chemise style blouse with voluminous forgiving fit, so you're not spending a bunch of time on fitting it. And because the neckline and sleeves are finished with double fold bias tape, this blouse only uses 3 main pattern pieces. This pattern proves that woven fabrics can be really just as quick to sew as knits when the design is really streamlined. I recommend using light to medium weight fabrics like cotton lawn or gauze or linen for this particular garment, especially if you're looking to reduce the sew time. So avoid things like silk crepe that might be a little bit more fiddly. And what I love about these simple pieces is that they're really versatile. You can make them again and again in different fabrics for completely different looks. Sarah, you've made the Dara blouse. How long did it take you?
Oh, yeah. I've made it in a cotton lawn, Robert Kaufman cotton lawn. I love that blouse. It's so pretty and so easy to wear. It probably took me 2 hours to sew. It was really fast. This makes me think I should make it again.
Yeah, the other thing that makes it easy is that you're really using only 4 techniques. You're joining your seams, you're doing some gathering, and then you're binding and hemming.
Yeah.
So the techniques that you are using, you're using in a repetitious manner, which repetition really makes things, a lot more streamlined to sew.
Yeah. It's a good one for doing little details and adding things to it also. It has an option to do lace insertion, which I haven't done, but it looks really cute. There's a lot of things you can do with it if you want to jazz it up once you've made it once. So that kind of brings us to some of our next tips. The next one is to build a library of tried and true patterns. I love this one. So once you've found patterns that work well for you, make them your go-to choices for quick projects. I have several patterns that I've made multiple times with notes about fitting adjustments already made. So you can try keeping a sewing journal with things like your personal adjustments for each pattern, simplified construction steps for your most used patterns. That will really speed things up if you don't have to dig out the instructions and follow them step by step every time, but you've made it before, so you can just write down a quick kind of order of operations and bang it out really fast. Fabric recommendations based on what worked well. So, any lessons you learned about fabric that you want to apply to future projects. Any ideas for variations to make the pattern feel fresh each time. And these are all things that you can kind of keep together either with the pattern or in a separate journal. The more familiar you are with a pattern, the faster you're going to be able to sew it. So, how about you, Haley? Do you have any patterns that you've made so many times you could sew them in your sleep?
There's a couple of our knitwear patterns that I've made many times. The Alice tee I've made a few times. Our Ryan t-shirt, which is a unisex t-shirt, I've made that for myself and for Eric, and I could definitely sew those in my sleep.
Yeah, those knit patterns can be so easy. I've made Alice several times, like I mentioned. I've made Joss a couple times. I've made Chelsea, which is not an easy pattern, but it is one of my tried and true ones. So this can encompass things that are a little bit more involved too. But I think it's helpful to have for those easy ones when you're looking for an easy project. It's nice to have a few tried and true easy ones.
Yeah, it's an essential, and like really consciously building that catalog of things and choosing patterns once in a while that you think are a style that you would want to recreate over and over again. So you can cultivate that library. Our next tip is also kind of related to this. So hacking your existing patterns for even quicker projects. So once you have those patterns that you really love, you can create variations on them without completely starting from scratch every time. This approach really gives you the benefit of new garments with the time-saving benefits of really familiar patterns to you. Some of our favorite quick hacks include turning the Joss pants into boxer-style shorts. Those are really trendy right now. Lowering the neckline to create a scoop neck on something like the Alice tee, adding patch pockets to the bow top, or changing the sleeve length on Dara so that you can create more seasonal variations. Pattern hacking, it's like one of my true loves, and it really gives you the confidence to work with a pattern that you know fits with the excitement of creating something new. Do you have a favorite pattern hack, Sarai?
I think changing the neckline is something that people think is a lot more complicated than it is. We actually have a free class on how to adjust the necklines. You can find it on cmark.com in our classes section. But it's actually really easy to do, and you usually don't have to do a ton of adjustments for it. So I feel like that's a favorite go-to, because if you have a neckline that you really prefer, that you really like, I love scoop necklines, for example, then you can apply it to a wide range of patterns. You can get more use out of the patterns that you already have and fit you.
I think I probably adjust sleeve and body length a lot because that just completely changes the silhouette of something. And patterns oftentimes have shortened length and lines. So it's like the entry level pattern hack that has a lot of impact.
Yeah, that's true. And then our next tip is to choose the right fabrics for speed. So some fabrics naturally lend themselves to faster sewing. Stable knits are great for quick projects because they're forgiving and they often require fewer finishing steps. Medium weight wovens that press easily are also really, really good candidates. So you want to avoid fabrics that need pattern matching for quick projects. So you want to look for solid colors or simple prints. Those are going to be your friends here, rather than things that are going to require pattern matching, like a lot of plaids and things like that. Or if you just don't care about pattern matching, that's fine too. You can have mismatched plaids, that's fine. Also consider whether the fabric needs special treatment. So are you going to need to pre-wash it? Does it require special handling? All those kinds of questions. Personally, I think you should always pre-wash your fabric if you plan to be washing it after you've made the garment. But you might want to think about those kind of special handling things that you might need to do either before you sew your garment or afterwards. I found that linen is really perfect for a lot of quick projects, like, for example, the bow top or the free Joss pants, because it's really easy to work with and it presses really beautifully. It's not going to hang you up, when you encounter those problems with fabric that kind of slow you down and hang you up and you have to like troubleshoot in the middle of your project. That can be really frustrating. And I think sewing with things that are easy to sew from the get-go, like linen or cotton lawn, just makes things a lot faster because you don't have those unexpected hiccups. Cotton jersey with spandex is my go-to for speedy makes like the Alice tee. I think rib knits are really great for that too. So those are some of my kind of go-to fabrics. What are yours, Haley?
Well, I think that linen and cotton jersey are both great options once I reach for a lot. Another one would be cotton lawn. I think that it's really versatile. It's great for blouses and for dresses. And just like linen, it presses really beautifully and it doesn't require a lot of troubleshooting.
Yeah, those are all great choices. All right, well, we've covered a lot today about how to find and complete satisfying sewing projects in just a day. So we talked about how to identify patterns with fewer pieces, like the bow top and the Alice tee. We discussed the benefits of simple closures, as seen in the Joss pants. And we explored the quick sew power of knits with the Astoria sweater and how minimal finishing details make the Dara blouse so quick to complete. We also talked about building a library of tried and true patterns and hacking existing patterns for new variations, as well as making the right fabric choices for your projects to make them quick and easy. So what's your big takeaway from today's episode, Haley?
I think that my big takeaway is that easy doesn't have to be boring. I think we talked a lot about like some clever ways to hack things or utilizing fabric or trim to make your fast projects a little bit more exciting. I think sometimes we can skip over like the easy or the quick projects because they just don't seem like super exciting, but you don't have to like lose track of like your creative decision making just because something's fast and easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To me, one thing that came to mind is there's a William Morris quote that I hope I don't butcher it, but it's something like, have nothing in your home that you do not believe to be beautiful or know to be useful. It's something like that. So the idea of utility and beauty, and I think sometimes the more complicated patterns can provide that sense of creating something really beautiful and really special. And the easier patterns can provide that utility and making things that they can be beautiful as well, but they can also just be very useful in your wardrobe and you get actually more wear out of them, which has its own value. So I think that's a really interesting framework for thinking about your quicker projects.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
So if today's episode inspired you to try a quick project, I have great news, which is that the Joss pattern that I mentioned earlier is free. And so it's completely free right now. And it's one of my favorite patterns for a really quick but satisfying sew. So we talked about that elastic waistband, those breezy wide legs, the high rise, and the 2 easy patch pockets. So they're really the perfect introduction to pants making without all that complexity of things like zippers or fly fronts. And you can make them in so many different fabrics: cotton twill, linen blends, denim, chambray, rayon twill, and they work for practically any season. I know I wear them year round. So if you want to get your free pattern, just head over to seamwork.com and click on the patterns and you'll find Joss there and you can sign up to get it for free. We'll deliver the pattern straight to your inbox and you can be wearing your new Joss pants in just a day. So be sure to grab it. It's going to be free just for this season, and then we'll switch to a different free pattern. So if you like this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. We love reading your reviews. We read every single one, and they definitely make our day when we see a new one pop up. You can also follow us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. You can follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to become part of the Seamwork community, head over to seamwork.com to learn how to join. And that's it for us this week. I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Seamwork Radio is brought to you by the team at Seamwork. Seamwork's an online community that supports you in creating a wardrobe that feels right for you. When you join us at Seamwork, you become part of our private community of makers, and you also get access to monthly sew-along classes, a library of over 200 sewing patterns, and tons of great resources to help guide you through the sewing adventure that you choose. Podcast listeners can get half off a Seamwork Unlimited membership, which means you can download as many of those 200 plus patterns as you want at any time, and our community will be there to guide and support you. If you'd like to join us for half off, just visit seamwork.com/go/podcast50. You can also find us on Instagram at Seamwork or visit our YouTube channel, which is called Seamwork Video. We love hearing from you, so let us know if there's a topic or a personal story that you'd like us to cover. Thanks for listening to Seamwork Radio.